Mhm. Susan, this is Karen. Sue Erber is here somewhere, but she's not on
It being just
camera right
past
now.
6 p.m., I'll go ahead and call the Winnebago County Board of Supervisors to order for October 26, 2020. The county clerk has verified the roll and confirmed that we do have a quorum. We have one individual who is excused this evening. So we'll move on to the first item on the agenda, which is the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by the invocation by Supervisor Locke. If you could please all join and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. If you could please all stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now the invocation by Supervisor Locke. Please go ahead, Supervisor Locke.
Bless us as we gather for this meeting. Guide our minds and hearts so that we will
Please
work.
go ahead, Supervisor Locke.
Hello?
Supervisor Locke, you are unmuted.
Okay. Bless us as we gather for this meeting. Guide our minds and hearts so that we will work for the good
Fortunately,
of our...
we're having some difficulty with Supervisor Locke, so we'll have to forego the invocation this evening.
We
We'll
can
move
hear
on then
us.
to the next item, which is a motion to adopt this evening's agenda. For that, I will call on Supervisor Albrecht.
Move to adopt this evening's agenda.
Second.
Supervisor Albrecht,
Move to adopt this.
Shiloh, we can hear him and I'm seconding it.
Shiloh, can you hear us?
Evening's agenda.
I don't think Shiloh can hear us.
Supervisor Albrecht, you're,
Shiloh, he has made the motion and Snyder.
I'll go ahead. Please go ahead one more time, Supervisor Albrecht.
Move to adopt this evening's agenda.
Okay, he did make a motion to adopt this evening's agenda. Is there a second?
Second, District 35.
There is a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. And if at any time, if anyone is ever opposed and uncertain, just go ahead and raise your Zoom hand when we do the nay vote. Seeing none, that motion carries. Moving on down to the next item on the agenda, and that is an opportunity. With each agenda, we give an opportunity for the public to speak with any item on the agenda this evening or any item under county jurisdiction. Is there anyone who wishes to speak this evening from the public? Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak this evening?
Don't keep asking that.
I'll call on Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Paul Eisen, 1807 Brighton Beach Road, Fox Crossing.
Supervisor Eisen, we cannot hear you.
I think everybody else can hear me, but you
Len
can't.
says he can.
Yeah.
Okay,
I call
Supervisor
for
Powers
point of
can hear you
order.
as well.
I call
Bear
for
with
a
us over
point
here
of
because for
order.
some reason on our end, we cannot
starting
hear
it
you, but
again?
obviously you,
Point of
so
order.
we need to clarify one thing on this end. So if you'll give us a minute to clarify the reasoning for that.
Jesus, Helen. Eisen's starting it already.
Yeah,
You hear that?
That's right.
He's doing his point of orders already?
Hey,
Bill, we can hear you.
Bill,
There is never a dull moment when he's here.
yeah, you're
Everyone is
unmuted
currently unmuted.
and unfiltered too, I guess.
Where's
Watch
the
your
chat
language,
box?
Yeah,
Where's the
got
chat box?
activated to begin with.
I think I just have to call the clerk
The mic on our end, but somehow
and tell her that there's a technical problem.
Here.
Yeah, I'm not used to this one either. Should be this one. Okay.
could start it down and shut us down and bring us back in. Should have to do, okay,
Sue, just take the phone off your
okay,
hook.
okay,
I don't have
all
her
right.
phone. I don't have her number.
Sue Ertmer, we can hear you.
One more.
Can you hear me?
Everybody can hear me
Snyder
except
District
the
35?
I don't know where I can
chairman.
even,
Where's the chat box so we
They
can
can hear us now?
communicate?
oh, you can hear us now?
I can hear you.
Before. You can
You
hear us
can't
now,
hear
okay.
me.
We're gonna take it down and bring it back up, so bear with us. So I wonder if we have to end it, or if we can. just-
All on the bottom of your screen, click participants. And it'll show all of the
It's not- Okay, just back out completely.
participants on the right hand.
Yeah.
Okay. End meeting,
Leave
leave
meeting, leave
meeting,
meeting.
okay. Sign and leave.
I'll make you host or something so that it doesn't drop.
Okay, mine is, okay. Sign.
That's good. I see your hand up. Where's the circus emoji?
Okay, can you hear us now?
Yes.
We can hear
Yes.
you.
All
You
right,
can't hear
let's
us.
Like somebody.
Everyone is unmuted. Sue, this is Jerry. Can you hear me?
No.
This is Tom Snyder, District 35. Can you
Okay.
hear me? Interesting.
Dickie,
Interesting.
you want to say something? I unmuted you.
I just said, Sue,
Vicky
can you hear
Fitzgerald?
me?
Oh, me? Can you hear me?
Still can't hear.
Yeah, we can hear you, Vicky.
I
Got
hear
you, Vicky.
Yeah.
Good start to our budget, huh?
Tom Snyder, could you give it a try?
Yes, I can hear you, Sue, but evidently you can't hear us.
Oh, that could be it.
And that's what I was trying to do.
Well, we can roll with Vicky.
There you go.
We can hear you now.
We can hear you, but you can't hear us.
Now I can hear you.
Okay.
We're all set. I'll turn it back to the chairman. Sorry about that.
Why don't he start over? We never did the pledge.
Yes, we did.
Yes, we did, Paul.
We did.
Okay, sorry for that technicality, but you certainly, all of you can understand that there are interesting snafus with this new technology. So thank you very much for bearing with us. So just to verify,
Thank
we
you,
were at the
Mr.
portion.
Chairman.
Yes, Supervisor Eisen.
Paul Eisen, 1807 Brighton Beach Road, Fox Crossing.
Please go ahead.
I have some major issues with the 2021 executive budget. Number one, with great uncertainty with the COVID-19 pandemic, in my opinion, the 2021 budget ought to have been issued in alternatives. A, normal, and B, COVID-19 assumptions, so that the county board of supervisors could gauge, compare, and contrast the alternatives. Number two, I object to the mechanism used throughout the budget to reconcile vacant positions accounting. This board deserves a full explanation of what happens to turnover savings should the position not be filled. It looks as if we are just protecting the budget amounts. Turnover savings and fringe objects 51,150 and 51,250 give the appearance of padding the wages and fringes of retiring employees. I would like to stop this deception and reduce the appropriate accounts of wages and fringes unless otherwise justified. As an example, the 5 departments with these issues: the sheriff, $100,000. Human Services, $222,711. Parkview Health Center, $400,000. Child Support, $14,000. Public Health, $100,000. $386,711. What happens to this money? And the third issue, my third objective is to call on Human Services Director, Dr. Bill Topel, to share with the county board how he has addressed the issue of a decade of over $1 million of annual surpluses, resulting in retroactive excess levy. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Supervisor Eisen. Next speaker, Supervisor Gordon.
You're muted, Julie.
Please go ahead, Supervisor Gordon.
Could you ask whoever is running the Zoom portion to mute everyone again, or we will just have that background noise during the entire budget process?
Can you go ahead and mute everyone, Sue? Okay, is there anyone else from the public who wishes to speak?
You're muted, Shiloh.
Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to speak this evening? Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to speak? Supervisor Bender? Please go ahead, Supervisor Bender.
I too wonder how we can basically budget for employees that basically aren't there. It's like receiving a credit, like in Parkview, if you're running 8 CNAs to every 10 patients, when we're missing one of them, that means that each patient isn't even getting 6 minutes an hour, because at 10 to 1, you get 6 minutes an hour. I think that instead of basically putting the $400,000 back in the budget, we should be hiring extra CNAs. So when somebody does leave, we have somebody to step into that position. I think the whole process of basically budgeting for people that are turning over, we all know we got record turnover in Winnebago County. Why that is, I don't know. But people seem to be leaving us. There's 119 as of August that just quit for no good reason, I guess. They must have found better jobs. But I don't think we should be budgeting for people that are leaving and leaving the positions on full.
Thank you, Supervisor Bender. I'll ask one more time, is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak this evening? Okay, seeing none, we'll close that portion of the agenda. We'll move on to the next item, which is reports from committees, commissions, and boards. Any reports from any committees, commissions, and boards from any county board member? Just go ahead and raise your Zoom hand.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Supervisor Wingren, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before we get too far into this process, I'd like to commend the county executive and department heads for working since August, or actually before August, to come up with a budget. We've looked at the budget at our committee level. We've met with the county executive and department heads to go over the budget. So to come here tonight, and I say these words with great trepidation, and grandstand that this is a bad budget is absolutely ridiculous. I've urged Mr. Eisen and others, if they have questions, to talk to the department heads individually. Ask these questions. Don't slow down the process with these inane questions and actually question the integrity of these people who have worked so hard openly. Mr. Eisen and others have a chance to ask questions during the budget process or before the budget process and now during the budget process. At the end of this, I think we need to come together, support what we are doing to help the people of this county. And again, thanks to all those who have worked in a positive way to bring this issue to our attention this evening and tomorrow.
Thank you, Supervisor Wingren. Next speaker is Supervisor Powers. Please go ahead, Supervisor Powers.
Thank you, Chairman Ramos. I agree with Supervisor Wingren. I went over this budget. I made phone calls all last week and even over the weekend, calling department heads with questions that I had. There's ample opportunity to go over the budget during the preliminary budget meetings, and then when we get our budget books, discussing these issues with us department heads, which I did all week long. So, you know, I feel like I'm pretty good because I know the answers to the questions that I had in the budget. So I don't think this is the time to bring it up. We've had well over a week to have these budgets, and we should have been looking at them all along.
Thank you, Supervisor Powers. Seeing no other call-ins, we'll close the portion for reports for committees, commissions, and boards. Oh, I see one other one. Supervisor Defferting, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Chimed in the last second there. I just wanted to give everyone a heads up in regards to the remodeling of the basement of the Oren King building. Myron Construction is still working on the renovation right now. The time that they are estimated to be complete is going to be around November 13th, second week of November. And so at that point, then the Winnebago County Connect program can actually start. So I just wanted to have the board be aware of that, and I know that that's all of this was included in the budgets for not just the district attorney, but also the sheriffs and the Department of Health and Human Services. So yeah, this project will officially be starting hopefully by the end of November. Thank you very much, and I so yield.
Thank you, Supervisor Defferting. Seeing no other call-ins, we'll close that portion of the agenda. We'll move on to the next item, which is County Board Chairman's report. So first, Supervisor Galante asked to be excused this evening. And then just to make sure everyone's on the same page, but I think you all are aware, in terms of the budget process, first of all, I want to say thank you, the County Executive and Finance for preparing the budget, but also for the County Clerk and staff for all their involvement, certainly as well with it. And then IT and Corporation Council, because they very much have been involved with the logistics of how we're going about this process. And I'm sure I've missed someone, and that's certainly not intentional. But just so we're all on the same page, so tonight, what we will do is we'll review the budgets that are on the first agenda for October 26th, which basically means the county executive budget and the overview through facilities and property management. Once we're completed with that, we would adjourn for the evening and then start again tomorrow morning at 8:30, working through the various budgets that you see on the agenda that is listed for October 27th. So tomorrow morning, we would start with the district attorney's office and move through those budgets through solid waste department. Once we are done with that, I'm going to go ahead and pause here because I kind of hear a replay. Do we know why that's occurring?
We weren't hearing it.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and continue. For some reason on our end, we are hearing a re-audio of what I've been saying, but as long as you can't hear it, I'll go ahead and continue.
Have you got an extra set of microphones on, Shiloh? That would give you feedback.
We'll look on our end to see if we can figure that out, but since you all can hear that recording, okay, I will go ahead and continue then. So starting tomorrow in the morning, we will start at 8:30. We would start with the district attorney's budget, and we would continue as you see on the agenda for tomorrow through the solid waste department tomorrow. Now, if we were unable to complete those reviews tomorrow, then we would continue on Wednesday morning at 8:30. Assuming we are able to complete all our reviews, however, by the afternoon tomorrow, then we would actually be adjourning until 4 p.m. on Wednesday. But there are a couple timeframes that are important for everyone to be on the same page about. It's in regards to the amendments. So what we would ask first of all, you can submit an amendment at any time. So anytime over the next 2.5 to 3 days, if you have an amendment, you can go ahead already and let the finance department know. And you have some contact names and numbers for that in your packet that you received last week. If you don't, we can certainly furnish for you again. But the times that are most important is to have those amendments at the latest to the finance department by 10 a.m. this Wednesday, October 28th. That gives them an opportunity to ensure they've reviewed them, prepared them all, so that they can then return them to all of the county board supervisors and the public by 2 p.m. this coming Wednesday, October 28th. So you all and the public have an opportunity to review them before we would reconvene to review the amendments and then the final of the adoption of the actual budget, starting at 4 p.m. on Wednesday. Any questions in regards to the process, in regards to the plan for the budget review and how we'll approach the amendments and the actual final vote on the budget? Okay, good. That was actually all I wanted to go over in terms of the board chairman's report. So we will move right down to the only resolution this evening. That's resolution number 098-10-2020, adopt 2021 annual budget. This is a motion and a second to bring it to the floor. I'll call on Supervisor Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to bring that motion to the floor.
Second.
Is there a second? There is a motion and a second. So now the budget as initially presented by the county executive is on the floor. So we will move forward now with the review of the budget. So for that, I will call on Executive Harris. Executive Harris, please go ahead and do a budget overview, and then we would start directly with your departmental report after that.
Sure. You should be able to hear me now.
Yes, we can hear you well.
Very good. I want to give some general information before we go to the first section of the budget, which is on page 82. But first, I want to point out that this budget takes our total budget from $180,637,000 up to $183,099,000. That's an increase of 1.36%, but our tax base has grown faster than that. So once again, our equalized tax rate will drop, and it'll drop from $5.07 down to $4.95. And that's the lowest that equalized tax rate has been in decades. And the equalized tax rate is the tax rate averaged over the budget expressed per $100,000 of equalized value. Then I'd like to answer the question about wages and fringes. This is a little complicated, but when we do our budget, we generally budget as if vacant positions were filled, because that's the goal, to fill them, and as if the person filling that position has a family health insurance coverage. If we didn't do that, a small department that hired someone that elected family insurance would be over budget and then would be forced to cut other expenses. However, in the largest departments, we build in an adjustment factor because in a very big department like Human Services or Parkview, you never actually have all the positions full. And in fact, there are certain positions within the county, like almost all the other counties, that turn over with great frequency. And CNAs at Parkview, for instance, or jailers, those are positions that turn over with regularity with all counties. I also want to make a distinction. I usually give this speech about every other year. And I like to caution the board that if we have general fund reserves, that's like a savings account. That's one-time money. And that fits well to offset a one-time expense. But if you use one-time monies to cover recurring expenses, that causes a problem in a subsequent year. And let me give you a lay example. You have someone that's looking at their first apartment, and they see an apartment they really would like to have, but it costs them $100 a month more than what their cash flow would be from work. But they have a savings account of $1,200. The temptation might be to say, okay, I can rent that apartment because I can take $100 of savings a month and add that to my free cash flow and cover the rent. However, when you get past that initial year, when the next year comes up, you no longer have that savings account to draw on. And that's the same issue you have with the general fund. If you apply the general fund to recurring expenses, then you either have to continue drawing on the general fund year after year, or make some other recurring change to offset it. And that's just a warning I want to give, because so many state and local governments have gotten into trouble by matching one-time revenues with recurring expenses, and it puts them into a deficit position over time. Another common question that I know many of you have is with regard to workers' compensation and property and liability insurance. And Karen Powers actually called me on this today, but I think a lot of you have this question, that both of those items moved up quite a bit in every department. The reason for that is that we self-insure, and we take money from departments to pay the workers' compensation. And then if the actual expenses are less in a given year, we build a surplus in those accounts. And when we have a surplus, we then apply it to subsequent years. Where the amount of surplus that we're applying in workers' compensation and property and liability insurance in 2020 exceeds what we have available for 2021. So with a smaller subsidy coming back to those departments in 2021, we have to increase those rates. And I thought I had one more card, but I think that's all I have before we go into the budget. And the first item.
Before we do executive affairs, just to make sure, I see the Zoom hand for Supervisor Albrecht. Supervisor Albrecht, did you have a question? Just want to make sure I didn't miss you.
Oh.
All right, very good. Just wanted to make sure. Thank you. Please go ahead, Executive Harris.
Okay, if you go to page 82, that's where the department staffing is for the county executive's budget, my budget. And I have 2 full-time employees, myself and John Fink, and that's the same as in prior years. The adjusted budget for 2020 was $253,214, and that's increasing to $258,571. A little less than that on the levy because there is a revenue that comes in from solid waste. And that's a change of about $4,000 from the prior year, which is wages and fringes. That's the.
I see one question or comment from Supervisor Eisen.
Paul, you're muted.
Please go ahead, Supervisor Eisen.
I would like to take us back to the overview, pages 12 and 13. Back in 2007, I sought to include the solid waste department into the budget. It didn't happen. However, the executive added the solid waste department to the appendix to the budget. Everyone can now access the same information about the solid waste department as any other department. Perennially, I have attempted to make the solid waste department more transparent. Today, I would ask the county board to add the solid waste department to the county table of organization on page 12, and the solid waste management board to the county board committees and boards of jurisdiction on page 13. And please consider this. Does the organization chart represent Winnebago County government? You answer that question. Second, is the solid waste department a Winnebago County department? 3, does it operate under Winnebago County Human Resources and Finance rules? And does the solid waste department director report to the county executive? Now, if your answer to these questions is yes, why can't we add the solid waste department to the organization chart? Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Eisen. Next speaker is Supervisor Shorsey.
Thank you,
Please go ahead.
Mr. Chairman. Regarding workers' compensation, have we seen a percentage increase in what would normally be paid due to the COVID-19 outbreak?
No, I don't believe we have. I believe the change is largely just a matter of how much we had in those accounts that we could apply back to the departments as a subsidy. And when that amount was high, I think we were applying a certain amount, and now we're applying about half of that because the balances have gotten lower, and that will fluctuate with time. But I don't think we're seeing any particular event that's changing the expense.
Okay, thank you. And then I would just like to comment on Supervisor Eisen's concerns about solid waste. I think that is shared by a number of supervisors, just, you know, not understanding the whole relationship. So perhaps it's something that could be a future topic, so we could really dig down and understand the relationship, and if we're overlooking something, or if organizational charts need to be changed. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Shorsey. Next speaker, Supervisor Eisen. Please go ahead, Supervisor Eisen.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. At this point, I'd like to bring you to page 25, the fringe benefits components. And under the employer share of the health insurance for 2021, there's a figure of $15,982,077. And there's an indication that this is a reduction from 2020 of $379,542. And then under the employee share of health insurance, there's a reduction of $51,756. Now, if you go to page 27, the 2021 appropriations for Winnebago County, and you look at the self-funded health insurance, you see an increased expenditure of $1,022,288. Then go to page 145 and look at the self-funded health insurance, and it indicates a decrease in the fund balance of $891,038. I would call upon the Human Resources Director to work us through this information. We're reducing the employer's share going into the insurance. We're reducing the employee's share. We're raising the expenses of the insurance by over $1 million. And then we're taking money from the self-fund to pay it off. I don't understand how that works. And I don't understand how anyone else would understand. But having worked in insurance, I have some insights, but not enough to unravel this.
Thank you, Supervisor Eisen. I'll call on Director Collard. Please go ahead, Director Collard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll try, although you mentioned a lot of figures and I'm not sure I'll hit on all of them. So I'll just try to give some overview. First of all, on the health insurance, we do not anticipate changing the total premiums for 2021 at all. So we're keeping a flat premium and using the fund balance. It has been a crazy year for health insurance. Our expenses in 2020 are currently running approximately $2 million below what was budgeted. And so we're very much in the black and building up a significantly greater surplus in 2020 than had been expected. And that is primarily due to the fact that people are not seeking healthcare outside of COVID to the extent that otherwise might have been expected. People are avoiding getting elective surgeries and many other things. It's a frightening time to go to a hospital. So we're seeing a huge impact from that. We did actually an actuarial study which showed that which predicted, I should say, that we should see a lower expense for most of the rest of 2020, but had the projected expense picking up at the end of 2020 and increased expense showing up in 2021 because of all the procedures, the medical procedures and medical care that was delayed because people didn't want to do it during the pandemic. So we had to do a lot of difficult prognostication to determine how much we thought would be there in 2021. So net, the prediction was that we would end up still ahead of where we would have been without the pandemic situation by the end of 2021. So our best projection was that even if we keep the premium the same, we might have a deficit of about $900,000. That's the $891,000 figure coming out of the fund balance for 2021. But that would be able to be taken from our projected surplus in 2020, which was back in June when we were figuring these numbers for the budget, projected to be a little over $1 million. Right now, it's looking closer to $2 million. So that's been very favorable in the sense of maintaining a healthy fund balance.
Well, how does that work out with the increase in expenditure of over $1 million on page 27?
I have to look at page 27 if you'll bear with me a moment.
The budget for 2021 is 18,759.15, and the budget revised is 17,733.394. That means that the expenses budgeting is going up $1 million. But you just said that we're going to be flat. It's not.
The The budgeted expenses in the health insurance fund are not the premiums. The premiums in the health insurance fund essentially are the revenue. Our health insurance fund, think of it as our own internal health insurance company. So, and I know Supervisor Eisen is very familiar with how insurance works, but for the others, we essentially take the premiums, have the premiums paid into our health insurance fund. Part of the premium is paid by the county, the majority of it is paid by the county, and a portion of it is paid by the employee. And there are different rules for what percentage the employee must pay. So in the health insurance fund, the expenses have to show the actual expenses we expect. And those based on the projection we had would be higher next year. So that's the increase we are currently expecting in 2021 because of all the medical care that has been deferred during the pandemic. So we do expect higher expenses, but we're not increasing the revenue side because we are building up more than enough fund balance in 2020 to pay those extra expenses. So we're essentially carrying over that fund balance we're building up in 2020, plus the fund balance we already had, which was significant, and using that to pay the extra expenses in 2021. That's our best projection at this point. So I think to go back, I think Supervisor Eisen also asked about why the employer share had gone down. And I'm looking for the page where you were seeing that, Supervisor
Page
Eisen.
25.
145?
Page 25.
25.
25.
Thank you. I'm looking for it. So these are components. The number on page 25 is not the full share or the full expense of health insurance. It's the premium paid by the county. So there are two ways that's different from the premium or from the expense budget overall, which we just looked at, of 18 million something. The amount paid by the county differs two ways. First of all, there is a percentage paid by the employee. In the case of retirees, and we do have a significant number of retirees still on our plan, then 100% is paid by the retiree, not by the county. And I think the reason that's showing a deduction is the budget is also based very much on how many health insurance enrollments we are expected to have, how many family enrollments, how many employee plus one, how many singles. And so we kind of change those assumptions every year. This year we did assume that there would be more vacancies unfilled. We took that into account to a greater extent than we had in the past. And so we made deductions from the employer share of premiums, which shows up in the budgets for various departments. So this number is really what's added up. Is really the sum of the health insurance expenses from all the departments in the county. And so since we made deductions in many of those larger departments, particularly to account for the fact that some vacancies would remain and therefore we wouldn't have to pay health insurance for those, we reduced that number accordingly. So that, I believe, is what accounts for the decrease there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Collard, and thank you, Supervisor Eisen. Next speaker is Supervisor Finch. Please go ahead, Supervisor Finch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm calling in regards to human service, the tax levy reduction amendment that some people want. You know, I've been fortunate, you've been fortunate, a lot of us have been fortunate. We haven't needed it, but there are people in our county that rely on this, and to turn around and, I'm not gonna say slap them in the face, but darn close to it, to take the money away that can help these people. I mean, I'm on a county board, not for myself, but for the people of Winnebago County. And when you see people that want to turn around and drop this money and that money for the people that need it, as far as I'm concerned, they do not belong on the county board. So I am hoping, I repeat, I'm hoping that we will give this money on human services to take care of the people from Winnebago County. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Finch. Executive Harris, anything further on your county executive departmental budget? Otherwise, we'll move on to the Corporation Council.
Ready to move on to corporate council.
Okay, please go ahead.
If you turn to page 90, that's where the staffing is for the corporate council. You'll notice that corporate council is being increased from 6 employees to 7 employees by the addition of 1 part-time employee. What's happened there is last year we brought mental health commitments in-house when we formerly had been hiring them out. And another part of this is that the amount of work required on the mental health commitments has expanded enormously with additional requirements that have been placed on that process by the court. But that's why that department's staffing went up initially in 2020 and then has gone up again in 2021. There's a list of significant changes on page 91. And the levy for that department is $116,600 in the proposed 2021 budget.
Any questions in regards to the Corporation Council departmental budget? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next department. That would be the County Clerk Department.
And the county clerk starts on page 100. There's also 2 smaller budgets connected with that, dog licenses and elections. If you'll recall, the county clerk's jobs and costs, or the amount of work and the cost involved, fluctuate pretty widely with the number of elections. And but that department will remain 3 full-time and 1 part-time employee for 2021, the same as for 2020.
All right, open it up for any questions. Oh, please go ahead, Executive Harris.
I was just going to say that the chart of significant changes is on page 102.
Okay, we'll open it up for any questions on the County Clerk departmental budget. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on next, and that's the County Treasurer's departmental budget. I believe it starts on page 117.
Correct. On page 117, you'll see that the treasurer office has 4 full-time employees budgeted for 2021, the same as it was in 2020. And the chart of significant changes is on page 118.
We'll open it up for any questions in regards to the County Treasurer departmental budget. If so, you can just raise your Zoom hand. We'll call on you in succession. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the next budget, which is Human Resources. Executive Harris?
Human Resources budget starts on page 130. And they're going to have 9 full-time and 2 part-time staff for a total of 11. That's an increase of 1 part-time staff over the prior year. And the summary of significant changes is on page 131.
Any questions in regards to the Human Resources budget? I'll call on Supervisor Eisen. Please go ahead, Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to refer to page 127. And in particular, the 2020 accomplishments, item 2, responded to COVID-19 emergency. And what I would like to ask is that we schedule a special orders meeting to explain how Winnebago County departments have responded to the COVID-19 emergency, and an accounting for the CARES Act funds and other funding that we've had come and go in respect to COVID-19. And also, what is the status of the property tax collection and forbearance experience? Although I think we might hear that from the treasurer, but I think we just went by the county treasurer. She must be pretty close, so maybe she could even address that issue. We voted on putting off the tax collections until October for those businesses and individuals who felt that they'd have trouble meeting their expenses. It would be nice to have an update on that. But that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Eisen. Is County Treasurer Mary Krieger still on in regards to his question of the status with the property tax forbearance? And if not, if the finance director might have some information?
We did present where we were at to the Personnel and Finance Committee over, I believe, a month ago it was. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me right now, but we ended up not having as many taxes put off as we thought. We actually, the city of Neenah paid even more than they did last year. So I believe we had about $750,000 all together, all parcels put off till October 1st. So we did not see much of a difference with the collections like we thought we would. But I do have a report I can send you, send to the board. I can find that tonight and send that out that we presented at PNF. And then we also, oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, I just said that would be wonderful. Yes.
Well, it sounds like we did good for the people and it didn't cost us anything.
Exactly.
Thank you, Jerry Finch.
Thank you, Supervisor Eisen. Anything further, Director Fitzgerald, on that?
Not for the taxes, I will send that out, but he did mention about the COVID CARES Act monies, and we have a very thorough accounting of that, and we have been on a bi-monthly basis presenting that to PNF as well, so that we've been staying transparent with them. So I do have the first two reports available to anyone that would like to see them and what we were reimbursed. And I also can present on it at a different time.
Very good. Thank you, Director Fitzgerald, and thank you, Supervisor Eisen. I also see Supervisor Gabbert. Please go ahead, Supervisor Gabbert.
Thank you, Chairman Ramos. Just a quick question on page 131, professional service increase for a consultant, review and update of compensation plan 21,000. Is this something that we've done in the past and we're gonna try it again? Where we hire an outside consultant to look at the compensation plan?
Executive Harris?
Either I or Mike, yeah. Basically, we have to periodically review and update our compensation plan and the levels of compensation and the relative position of different job titles has to be reviewed. And I think this is bringing that consultant back in for an update or someone to do a similar process.
Or someone,
it's not doing an entire update, but
okay, and it's someone, and it could be the person that did it for us originally, the company.
it has been in the past, but Mike can answer if are we
Okay.
committed to bringing in the same consultants?
Dr. Collard, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would anticipate that it will probably be the same consultant.
Okay.
And the executive is correct. We have not budgeted nearly enough money to completely redo the study. The study was done in 2016 primarily, and I find that it's a very good idea. And I said at the beginning that we would try to just do a little bit of a checkup every 5 years to prevent our salary schedule from getting too far out of balance with the labor market. And so we plan to do that from when the first study was done. And so it's a relatively modest amount, but we wouldn't do a full market study, but we'll probably just do some specific benchmark positions, and then maybe a few other positions where we had questions about or wanted the consultant to look at. We don't have a contract with the consultant yet. We could pick someone else, but obviously the first choice would be to go back to the consultant we used before, because we were very pleased with their work.
Would you be open to having some county board supervisor ask you some questions about certain departments and the pay scale in that department as part of the review?
Well, that's certainly one thing we will do. And if there are particular issues or questions, or people have concerns about where certain departments or certain positions are with respect to the labor market in general, that's the kind of thing we'd be looking for, to choose some positions to have the consultant look at.
Okay, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Collard, and thank you, Supervisor Gabbard. So just so everyone's on the same page, we're continuing on with the human resources budget. So next I'll call on Supervisor Konecki. Please go ahead, Supervisor Konecki. Supervisor Konecki, if you can go ahead and unmute yourself. Please go ahead. Your mic's open, Supervisor Konecki.
Thank you. I'd like to go back to page 127 again. The new hirees and the turnover there. Mr. Collins, do we underpay, or what's going on? The tremendous number of people, new hirees. Well, there's so many retirements. Could you answer that for me, please?
Dr. Collins?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll certainly try to answer that question. I think it's really just that the world has changed. People do not stay in jobs for as long as they used to. And I'm hearing that everywhere. I'm hearing it from all my counterparts in other counties and cities and so forth, and in the business world as well. It's just not what it used to be, where, my grandfather worked 60 years for the same company. Now, 7 years is a very long time, it seems. But there are some particular factors working on that number as well. It's very heavily weighted towards a couple of particular departments. First one is Parkview Healthcare Center. Everybody in the healthcare center finds it impossible to hire enough CNAs, and has a lot of turnover, frankly, among nursing staff in general and other staff as well. We're able to keep most of our staff filled, but not the CNA list. We haven't been fully staffed of CNAs for a long time, and we're hiring them every week. And every week we lose some. And we send out exit surveys and have other ways of trying to ask people why they're leaving. It's not the money. Our CNAs, for instance, are paid better, I believe, than any other CNAs for any other long-term skilled nursing facility in the county. It's just that people don't like the work. They don't like to be told what to do. They don't like the difficulties of the schedule, and we end up terminating some people who don't meet our standards, because we have very high standards. And so that's a constant battle, and one that contributes quite a bit to our overall turnover. The second department where we see a lot of turnover, where we didn't used to see turnover years ago, is in the sheriff's office. And again, I really don't think it's the pay, it's the nature of the work. It's the really tough scheduling, 24-hour scheduling. I hear from a lot of counties that they can't keep correctional officers and have a horrible time hiring them. We're pretty close to full staff most of the time on correctional officers, but it takes a lot of work to keep us there. And of course, there are training periods and so forth. So a certain number are always in training and not really available. But there's a lot more turnover there than there was 5 years ago. And worse than correctional officers is dispatchers and booking security clerks. We're doing pretty well on the booking security clerks the last couple of years, but dispatchers have become a real problem. It's very often we hire one. A few months later, they just aren't working out or don't like the work and don't like the schedule. and then we have to start over again. Adding to those two big departments, we have a lot of areas where it's just, there's more turnover. People are more interested in trying different things and working for different employers, and sometimes working in different fields. And so that, I think, is a long-term change in the workforce that we're just having to deal with. And it's not by any means unique to us. There certainly are some areas where pay is a factor, but overall, I still don't think that pay is the main factor or even a very large factor in why we're seeing that turnover. That's my opinion based on what I hear and what I see talking to people in departments and some of the people who leave. But certainly something we need to work twice as hard on just to stay in the same place. So I feel a little bit through the looking glass, I guess you could say.
Thank you very much for that explanation.
Thank you, Supervisor Konecki. Next speaker is Supervisor Bender. Please go ahead, Supervisor Bender.
Hi, Mike. What I'm curious, when we do the wage study, would it be possible to get two options? One without the step increases in there? You know when I worked for the county, we got reviewed every 18 months, and our supervisor, if he didn't think you were at that level, he would say, well, this is what you got to do to improve. But that way the merit-based pay scale would be the same for all county employees. Like right now, if you're a new employee, you can get like 7 shares. And if you're a long-term employee, you can get like 4 shares. I mean, I personally would rather see the step increases on a basically individual basis, like it was in years past, where the supervisor evaluated you and either put you up a step or told you what you needed to do to improve on it. And I think that would help with some of our people leaving us. So if we could get that in 2 options, and I too would like to commend Mark Harris and all his employees and staff for the excellent job they did. I mean, we're one of 5 counties that only have a 5% sales tax. And this year we're going to be $8 to $10 million under budget. And that's due to the fact of the good county workers that we have. And I truly would like to keep them all. So whatever we can do to basically keep the employment a little more steady would be helpful.
Thank you, Supervisor Bender. Next speaker is Supervisor Eisen, followed by Supervisor Wingren. Please go ahead, Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to refer to the Human Resources, page 147. And there you'll find a clinic expense of $424,516. And my question for Mr. Collard is, what metrics can you share to explain the savings from the health insurance plan cost to justify the clinic expense? We know that the expenses, we saved quite a bit of money because surgeries were put off this past year. We know that the premiums have gone up, but we have a $400,000 expense for the clinic. How can we measure what that's saving us from the insurance? Because the insurance premiums are still going up big time.
Dr. Collard?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our premiums are not going up big time this year, but often they do, and it's a huge expense and certainly something we work very hard to try to control. With respect to the clinic, we get a quarterly return on investment report prepared by the vendor for the clinic. And what we do is we look at all the visits that county employees and dependents made to the clinic. So for instance, I go to the clinic because I have a sore throat and get medical service from the clinic. That goes on the list as a visit. And the vendor then, we give them data from our health insurance fund generally. And they look to see what our average expense is to the county for a routine office visit, where an employee has, or a patient has some complaint such as a sore throat, we can then measure what the expense would have been expected to be if we didn't have the clinic. Because if I couldn't go to the clinic with my sore throat, I might have gone to Aurora or Affinity or Theta Care or someone else. So we can measure on average what the expense to the county would have been of that somewhere else. We add up all those substitution savings or substitution costs or expected expenses that were saved because we had the clinic. We just add those up and then compare them to the cost of running the clinic. So we do that every quarter and annually. And every quarter it ends up ahead in the black. It might be $50,000, $60,000, $80,000 in the black every quarter, just based on those substitution of expenses. And that's a real hard savings that we can prove existed. There are other categories of savings that I'm sure are happening that I cannot measure. There are better health outcomes. There are people who go more quickly, more easily, more readily to the clinic because they don't have to pay anything. There's no deductible, no copay. So people can go earlier and hopefully head off minor medical problems before they become serious ones. Also, we end up with people going to the clinic for some basic care rather than going to one of the big healthcare systems. The big healthcare systems all have enormous financial incentive to take someone who comes in the door for primary care, and frankly, they don't make money on that primary care. They make money if they can refer me with my sore throat to a specialist, an ENT doctor, and take care of that. We never know if that's necessary or not, if it's outside our system. But if they go to the clinic, there's no financial incentive to send people unnecessarily to specialists. And I'm sure that happens. Everyone in the industry knows that it happens, but we can't measure it. I can't try to tell you we can measure it. And finally, savings is just better health outcomes with people getting earlier and better medical care. It's something we measure every year through our health risk assessment program, for instance. And on average, the people who have been with us every year and have gone to the clinic every year for at least that one trip for a health risk assessment, even though they're getting older, they're not getting unhealthier. They're not getting increasing their health risks. So that's a tremendous achievement. And I'm sure that translates to dollars and cents, but it's a little bit more tenuous to put a number on it. So I have a hard time saying I can point to that as a savings, but nonetheless, I'm pretty sure that there is a financial savings to us resulting from that clinic operation in all three of those categories.
Thank you. That's a beautiful explanation. I really appreciate the last question I would have relates to page 148. Well, I guess maybe you have answered that question about the put off surgeries. I was going to ask, why were we projecting claim payments $1 million more than the 2020 budget and $2 billion more projected. And I think that maybe that'll go back to what you had said, that there are surgeries that are put off that we're not having the expenses for, and we're going to get them as the clinics open up for these other surgeries. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Supervisor Eisen. Next speaker is Supervisor Wingren. Please go ahead, Supervisor Wingren.
Actually, Supervisor Buck, just a housekeeping issue that I'm up there as Supervisor Wingren. So as much as I respect Supervisor Wingren, I'm up there under his name. And just quickly for Mike, it's kind of brought something up that Supervisor Eisen had mentioned. Mike, how are you marketing this health risk assessment to the employees of Winnebago County? And I think you kind of did answer it as far as dollars and cents wise, maybe not a good way to put a a dollar amount on this, but it's my understanding that if we have more employees taking a health risk assessment, that lowers our healthcare costs. Is that correct? And then I guess, you know, do you feel like that we're getting the information out to the folks in Winnebago County about this health risk assessment?
I think so. I think most people understand the benefits of it now. The health risk assessment alone doesn't necessarily immediately reduce our healthcare costs. It costs us money to put them on. When I look at it, every year they have, well, for instance, this year, I think we had 8 or 9 people in the go to a hospital today category when they realized what some of their numbers were in terms of their body chemistry and their blood pressure and so forth. And we had about 30 people in the immediate risk category who needed to get medical attention. And if even a handful of those people didn't know that they realized medical attention, that's potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars of savings right there. And even 1 or 2 of those could overwhelm the cost of putting on the health risk assessments. So I think most people understand the good of it. We also try to tie it in with our county wellness committee. We do have an active county wellness committee with representatives from various departments and buildings. And it's on the agenda for their meeting tomorrow, for instance, to review the report from this year's health risk assessments, to particularly try to identify what health risks are increasing, which ones are we doing better at, and so forth. And then to try to tailor some education programs, voluntary things that employees can do, just to try to increase awareness of how people can really take a little bit better care of their health. And I would say one interesting thing we found when just reviewing this report last week, the number of people in the county health plan who have a primary care provider is way higher than the national average, way higher. And I think that's in large degree due to the fact that we do require this process every year. So people, what most people do, or many people do, is they take those numbers and then take them either to the clinic or to their other healthcare provider. So they're used to doing that and doing something about their health on an annual basis. And then, of course, having the clinic there means people can treat the clinic as a primary care provider with no expense to them. So again, easy solution for people and just kind of bring the health awareness to the forefront for them.
Thank you very much. You haven't tried to incentivize any folks for doing their health assessment as far as a member dollar bank or giving them money back and in some way, shape, or form. I know other health insurance plans work that way. If you and your spouse do the health assessment, that they get some money back and their dollar bank or something like that. And nothing like that in Winnebago County.
Yeah, yes, we do. And I'm sorry, I didn't catch that part of your question at first, but there is a strong incentive. For instance, for a full-time employee, the employee is normally expected to pay 17% of the health insurance premium. But if the employee and the employee's spouse, if the spouse is also part of a plan, if they fully participate with the health risk assessment program, then it goes down to 12% they have to pay. So there's a 5% difference on the premium, and that's a substantial chunk of money, especially when you're talking about the family plan. So I believe our participation rate is 97 or 98% on the health risk assessment, which is, of course, a phenomenal participation rate because we do have a strong incentive.
That's all I have. Very nice job. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Supervisor Buck. Next speaker, I thought there was one other individual who had called in, but seeing none at the moment. Executive Harris, anything further on the human resources budget?
No, I'm ready to move on to finance.
Okay. Seeing no other call-ins, then we'll move on to the finance department. I believe it starts on page 165.
That's where the chart of staffing is. There's 6 full-time employees in the department for 2021, the same as 2020. You can see a summary on page 166. And there's also the general services in a separate budget run by finance that begins on page 172.
Very good. We'll open it up for questions and comments. I see Supervisor Eisen. Please go ahead, Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Vicky, could you, I'm referencing page 160 for finance, and there is a program description of accounts payable. And it says to receive and pay all obligations of the county, maintain detailed records of outstanding payable balances. Can you now reference page 114 under the treasurer? And their program description for receipts and disbursements says to receive all funds due the county and disperse all payments made by the county. What's the difference between what the finance director is doing and what the treasurer is doing?
That's a great question, Supervisor Eisen.
To a layman like me, and I've been doing this for a dozen years.
Right, great question. So we are very good at the county with separation of duties. So with that being said, we create the vendors in finance. We receive the invoices, we enter the invoices, and we choose which invoices are going to get paid and create a batch to pay. When we're ready to print the checks, my accounts payable department works with the treasurer's office, and the treasurer's office holds the check printer, the signature and everything, and they print the checks, they send them out so that we can't create a vendor and pay ourselves. So it's actually a separation of duties that auditors really appreciate, and you don't usually get that, but with a treasurer, we're able to do that. So she actually prints the checks.
So you're doing all the book work, and then they're just writing the checks
and mailing them out for us. That's correct, and that keeps that separation.
Oh,
yeah, we do all the work.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Eisen. It's a good question because the wording is very close to almost identical. So fair point, Supervisor Eisen. Thank you. Any other comments in regards to the finance departmental budget? No, seeing none, then we'll go ahead and move on to the next department, which is Information Systems and Technology Replacement Fund.
On page 183, you have the department staffing. That's staff for 18 full-time employees, the same as 2020. There's the chart of significant changes on page 185. And I'm sure Patty Francoeur is here to answer any questions you might have.
Very good. We'll open it up to any questions in regards to information systems. I see one call, and I'll call on Supervisor Eisen.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I make reference to page 182. And on the accomplishment line number 19, Patty says completed the 2015 certification of our in-house written human services application. Could you explain to the county board what that all means?
I'll call on Director Francoeur. Please go ahead.
It looks like gobbledygook.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was transferring to another room, so can you just tell me the number again? I did get most of your questions.
Accomplishment number 19.
Number 19.
Yeah, what all does that mean? It's gobbledygook. That's administrative gibberish.
Okay. So the Human Services Department has an application that does pretty much everything for their consumers. It does all of the tracking, the medications, the billing, and we wrote that in-house. We have to comply with state and federal mandates as far as being a certified employee health repository kind of application. So we are writing to meet the specs to make this a certified employee health for the whole consumer base for human services. 2015 is not the year. There were 2 certification levels, I'll say, and they just happened to be called 2014 and 2015. I don't know if that's when the
Yeah, if you could convert that into layman's terms for the final printing, that would be probably appreciated from anyone who ever decides to read it.
Okay.
Supervisor Ramos, I'm assuming you called on me because you unmuted me. You're on mute, but I'm just going to go on with my statement. I actually appreciate the verbiage. It's common industry language to refer to something as an outside purchase system or in-house. So the verbiage makes sense to me on line 19. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Lenz. Next speaker is Supervisor Joyce. Please go ahead, Supervisor Joyce.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one quick question on page 195 for the capital outlay. Could you please explain what the EMC is, please? Thank you.
That is a storage device, and it's just a manufacturing brand. So it's external storage for us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Joyce. Next speaker is Supervisor Finch. Please go ahead, Supervisor Finch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want the county board and people to know I've had many different opportunities to ask questions to Patty, and I mean, any given time of the day, and sometimes even closer to 5 o'clock at night, she's right there to answer the questions, and she does a very good job to give me, and I'm quite sure other board members, the perfect right answers. So when somebody takes I'm not going to say a shot, but kind of shot her down a little bit, I just don't think we should be doing that. When we have a good employee that goes out and above the call for Winnebago County, we should be congratulating them and thanking them. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Finch. Next speaker is Supervisor Konetsky. Please go ahead, Supervisor Konetsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Say, Patty, on back to page 195 again. How long would you hope to get out of that equipment there, that new equipment? It turns out.
What type of life cycle? Is that what?
Yes, yes.
The servers are probably, I don't have that in front of me of what we actually assigned their age, but it's probably 5 to 7 years, and that's already extending the industry average. So we get a long life cycle out of our equipment.
Okay, I guess it might seem like long, but in this day and age, they might come up with something new by that time too. Well, you answered my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Konetsky. Seeing no other call-ins, Executive Harris, anything else on Information Systems and Technology Replacement Fund?
No, I think the next item will be the County Board and Scholarship Programs on page 541.
Very good. Let's move on down to County Board and Scholarship Program.
And there are no employees associated with the county board, except to the extent that board members themselves are employees. And there's a schedule of significant changes for the county board on page 545. And you'll notice there's a very significant decrease in the amount of tax levy from 2020 to 2021.
And just for reference for individuals who might be wondering why those decreases, those were based on A, where we're at year-to-date actuals as we prepared the budget given COVID, and B, also reconciling with the 3-year averages for a number of those areas as well. So it was both of those factors that were actually taken into consideration when you see those reductions, just in case individuals are wondering. With COVID, of course, with virtual meetings, there's been a change, obviously, with transportation and that sort of thing, and conferences as well. While we don't have a crystal ball as to know all of 2021, I think we can be confident that at least for part of 2021, we'll still be dealing in a similar fashion. So it's between that and reconciling the 3-year averages as well. Any questions in regards to the county board departmental budget and also the scholarship program? I'll call on Supervisor Norton. Please go ahead, Supervisor Norton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I should know this, but do our what we have to pay for NACO and for WCA, that comes out of our budget, right?
Yes, yes, there is a line item for memberships, subscriptions. It's in a line item related to that. Let's see if I can find it.
And as member of the membership committee for NACO, I think they told us they were going to keep the line on the same level of what it costs to join NACO. And is that the same for WCA? Does anyone know? I'm just curious.
So it's under line item 53502 on 548, just to answer a question in regards to membership. Was there another question, Supervisor Norton? I might have missed that.
I'm a member of the membership committee for NACO, and I think they said that the fee or to join was going to be the same. Do we know that's the same for the WCA too?
That I do not know definitively. We will check. We'll see if we can get that answer within the next couple of days, so folks can know by the end of this budget. So we'll verify that. Okay, Supervisor Norton?
Okay.
I'm pretty sure the answer is yes, that it is the same, by the way. I just, since I'm not 100%, I want to verify, but I'm pretty sure the answer is yes. But we'll
I know that
yeah.
NACO was the same for sure, but I don't know about WCA.
Yeah, I'm 90% sure it was the same, but once again, if I'm not 100% sure, we'll clarify and give you the definitive answer.
I hate to be a budget or pesky about this, but do all our memberships to any organization, Eastern to Wisconsin, Planning Commission, whatever, do they come all out of the county board budget? Am I positive about that? Am I thinking that correctly?
Only the membership dues that are specific to just the county board come out of there. But like I have membership dues, for instance, for the Wisconsin Government Financial Officers Association. Those dues would come out of my budget. So many of us have our own associations we're with, and it's in our budget. Is that what you were asking?
Yeah, well, thank you. Pretty much, I mean, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Vicki Fitzgerald. I'm just curious. I mean, I know there have been attempts to take money away from one of those organizations, and I'm not attempting to do that. I'm just general. I think I should know this. I should, but I'm just to reinforce that general county board things, county things are coming out of budget. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Supervisor Norton. Next speaker is Supervisor Konetsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In regard to those scholarship from high school kids in the area, I want to commend Jerry Finch for that. It was his idea that presented this to the board. I'm not sure what year it was, about 5 years ago. And I'm certainly glad he did that. And I'd like to acknowledge him again for bringing that idea forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Konetsky. And certainly thank you as well, Supervisor Finch, for all your efforts in regards to the scholarship program. Absolutely. So thanks again for the reminder, Supervisor Konetsky. Next speaker, I'll call on Supervisor Eisen. Please go ahead, Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, this one's for you and also for the past chairman, David Albrecht. I see that Winnebago County County Board Operations is $267,330. Now, I always like to make reference to our next door neighbor, Outagamie County. Their county board operations is $651,826, in excess of double what Winnebago County's county board operation is. And of course, Outagamie County has 3 full-time employees of the county board chairman. Wages paid to Winnebago County supervisors is $115,000. Wages paid to the same number of Outagamie County supervisors. Actually, their projection for next year is for 37. But anyway, that's $215,576. So our buddies in Outagamie County are taking home twice as much cash for their contribution to their citizens as we are. So I guess there's room for a raise for the next county board if it's the will of some people who want to push it.
He wants a raise. Thank you, Supervisor Eisen. Next speaker is Supervisor Finch. Please go ahead, Supervisor Finch. Supervisor Finch, please go ahead and try to unmute your mic.
How's that? Is that better?
Yes, your mic is open.
Actually, what I'd like to say is thank you to Supervisor Konetsky. Yeah, kind of was my idea in a way, but I did talk to a few other ones. And when you come right down to it, there are 36 other members that agreed with us. So when it comes to the scholarship program, it is a total Winnebago County period that gave the scholarship programs to the 9 students throughout the high school season. So when you come right down to it, I want to thank the county board and actually all the recipients that have taken the time to write a nice essay to the county and go from there. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Finch. And just for reference, there was a question about East Central Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission. You can find that one in the budget actually on page 559 under other operating grant payments. So I know we'll talk about that a little bit later in the budget, but there was a reference to it earlier. So I just thought I would point that out. So any other questions in regards to the county board and scholarship program departmental budget? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on to the final one for this evening. That's facilities and property management departmental budget. Executive Harris?
The department staffing is on page 199. They're budgeted for 39 full-time employees, the same as the prior year. Their levies increasing 1.57%. And there's a summary of significant changes on pages 200 and 201.
We'll open it up for questions or comments in regards to the facilities and property management budget. Supervisor Finch, did you have a question in regards to the facilities and property management budget? No? Okay, is there anyone else who has any comments or questions in regards to the facilities and property management budget? All right, seeing none, that will conclude that review. So that actually concludes our reviews for this evening. So before we actually adjourn, just to make sure we're all on the same page, the plan would be that we would start tomorrow morning at 8:30. We would continue these departmental reviews starting in the morning at 8:30 with the district attorney's budget, and then moving on down with all the departments that you see on the agenda for day 2. Please remember that if you have any amendments at all, you can start forwarding them to finance at any time during this review, but the latest would be 10 a.m. on Wednesday morning. So I do see a couple call-ins. So Supervisor Zellner, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What page would we find the information on the Winnebago County Fair grant?
That also should be on page 559. It's entitled Schedule of Miscellaneous Operating Grant Payments. It's the same one where you'll find in terms of East Central Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission, as well as some other agencies.
Also, are we going to, because there was no fair this year, are we just moving the money from 2020 into the grant money from 2020 into 2021? Or did we just take it out and put it in the general fund this year?
I'll give the director, finance director, an opportunity to answer that one.
Thank you, Chairman Ramos. We actually paid the Fair Association. So it's a separate entity, and we paid them right away in the beginning of the year. So they did get the $60,000 for 2020, even though the fair did not go on.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Supervisor Zellner. I'll call on Supervisor Albrecht. Please go ahead, Supervisor Albrecht.
I move to adjourn until Tuesday, October 27th at 8:30 in the morning.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I have my hand up, Shiloh.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second, but before we do, Supervisor Bender has one other comment, so we'll honor that. Supervisor Bender, please go ahead.
Just a correction on the fair. There wasn't an actual fair where we could participate, but there was still a virtual fair where all the people from 4-H got to enter and exhibit. There was actually a meat sale, and the $60,000 that we gave them, I'm sure they spent double that. So there was not a fair per se that you could go to, but for all of 4-H and the people that raised the animals, there was a meat sale. It was actually very successful. They got good prices for their animals. So just to clarify that there was actually a fair for people to participate in. It really wasn't opened up where you would go to the fair, but they probably spent double what we gave them. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Bender. So there was a motion and a second to adjourn until tomorrow morning at 8:30. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you in the morning at 8:30. Have a good evening.
Thank you.